Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Special Council meeting on October 3rd, 2022. You are now live on YouTube. We are now live on YouTube. I will start with the roll call of council. I, Mayor Shantz, am present and I'm chairing this meeting. Councillor Martin.
Present.
Councillor McMillan.
Present.
Councillor Merlihan.
I'm present.
Councillor Redekop.
Present.
And Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Thank you. It's nice to see many of us in the council chambers again. Motion the council reconvenes in open session. Moved by Councillor Redekop, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor? That's carried. Before we begin the meeting, please join me in observing a moment of silence. Thank you. The land on which we meet has been here from time immemorial. People have inhabited southern Ontario for about 10,000 years, and we acknowledge the Attawandaron or Chinatan, also known as the neutral people, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, who lived here when the settlers arrived and who share this land with us. May we together learn to care for and respect each other, the flora and fauna, and the land we inhabit together. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, we have two items to come forward from closed session, both appointments. The first one is an appointment to the Woolwich Heritage Committee, and I would entertain a motion that the Council of the Township of Woolwich, considering report C18-2022, respecting an appointment to the Woolwich Heritage Committee, appoint Karen Cummings to the committee for a term ending December 31st, 2022. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Merlihan, Councillor Martin, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And the second one is appointment to the Municipal Election Compliance Audit Committee, or MECAC. And the motion would be that the Council of the Township of Woolwich, considering report C19-2022, respecting Municipal Election Compliance Audit Committee, or MECAC, appoint the following members for the 2022 to 2026 term. Teresa Bish, Christine Fletcher, Dave Jaworski, Murray Stoddart, Ting Ting Su, Rosita C, Robert Williams, and Carl Zaire. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Shantz, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We have minutes from council meeting August 22nd, 2022, and Committee of the Whole September 12th, 2022. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Redekop, seconded by Councillor McMillan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have a presentation this morning, and I'm pleased to welcome Tova Davidson, Executive Director of Sustainable Waterloo Region. And she's going to bring us an update from Sustainable Waterloo Region. Tova, welcome. Good to see you.
Thanks, Mayor Shantz. Nice to be here. Can you hear me okay?
You're a wee bit quiet. I don't know.
Okay. I will try to talk louder. Almost never does someone say I'm too quiet. So I will try to talk a little louder.
That's
better.
Any better. Yes, it is. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Let me know when you can see my slides and I will get started.
We can see your slides.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Mayor Shantz and Council, for having me here tonight. Really excited to bring this update that we do each year to the council and to share some of the things that Sustainable Waterloo Region and the sustainability movement worked on in 2021 and a little bit about 2022. 2021 for us was a year of innovation, growth, and evolution. Despite an ongoing global pandemic, we saw a lot of things happening and a lot of growth happening and a lot of innovation in the kinds of work that we've done. So I'm going to share some of those things with you today. the first one I want to talk about is something that's near and dear to us, is that we actually did a rebrand. So if you see this logo, yes, indeed, this is still SWR. And I love the arrow indicating a movement forward and the highlighting of the word able, because we are able to do all the things we need to get to that sustainable future, that truly equitable, sustainable, and prosperous future. Some of the information on what our membership, including the township, has done during 2021. Together, the organizations in the Impact Network, which is the name now for the Regional Sustainability Initiative, as it was formerly known, have removed the equivalent of 22,000 nearly cars off the road. And 70% of members in that organization continue to implement projects in sustainability despite the global pandemic. We had an incredible amount of growth in 2021, and this, I think, indicates for many of us that sustainability and climate change has become much more understood as part of the responsibility of organizations and the way forward to be a truly sustainable organization, including financially. And it should be known, actually reach out to organizations during this time period, thinking it was maybe a little tone deaf to be doing that, and they were coming to us. So there really has been a shift in how organizations understand their the benefits of doing this work to them specifically. We also expanded our borders. We've had organizations from Wellington, Perth, and Oxford County come to us for many years now asking for help with the kind of work that we do. And we've always said no, because we're a Waterloo region based. And then we thought, why are we not helping? Climate change doesn't stop at the borders of the region. And so we're able to help organizations in these partnering communities as well. And that just means a nicer continuum across to make sure that we are mitigating our climate change work even beyond Sustainable Waterloo Region with our friends in our border counties. We were one of the drivers to the creation of the Waterloo Clean Economy ecosystem in partnership with Waterloo Region Community Energy, the Region of Waterloo, and of course, Waterloo EDC, who uses these maps for foreign direct investment attraction. You'll see here that there's an awful lot of organizations that work in the clean economy ecosystem, including many research institutions, and then you can see them all divided into different sections. And we call it clean economy because it's not just about the technology, it's about all kinds of different parts. And what we've heard from Waterloo EDC is they see these maps as successful if they have 100 applicants for them, and this one had more than 130. So it really highlights what I love to tell people is that Waterloo Region is actually the home for sustainability innovation as well as tech innovation. We launched a program called the Microforest project. This is actually taking undevelopable land, things we're not going to use for anything else. It's not going to be a residential space. It's not going to be employment lands, about the size of a building lot, and we return it to a naturalized state. The first two of these pilots were done in schoolyards, in communities actually in Cambridge in this case, directed to us by a community group that wouldn't have been able to afford to do greening projects. So not only is it addressing climate change, but it also has an equity and justice lens. These kinds of forests do things like reduce the heat island effect, so cool down on hot days, slows down water, slows down wind and major climate events, but it also sequesters carbon and just brings nature back to the community. Really happy to share that we've actually gotten funding to continue to do this through private organizations, as well as a foundation to be able to continue to plant these, and 6 more are going in this fall. The first 2, as I said, were in schoolyards, and this was an art project done by one of the classes at Manchester Public School. This is adorable. They each planted 1 tree and then together created their own microforest. As you're well aware, we talked to you about Transform WR in 2021, and so happy to say that all 8 area municipalities adopted this as our strategy. This strategic document, Transform WR, is the way towards that 2050 goal of an 80% reduction. And this work, of course, is done with your amazing staff in the township, and all 8 area municipalities, and SWR and REAP Green Solutions co-lead this work. And just in case you don't have it top of mind, there are 4 transformative changes that we know we need to do based on the Transform WR strategy. We need to transform the ways that we move. We need to transform the ways that we build and operate our spaces, both at home and at work, the ways we produce, consume, and waste, including our food systems, and transform the ways we relate to each other, knowing that we can actually get to a equitable, prosperous, resilient future, low carbon community through sustainability work. That we're never going to solve things like poverty or justice, equity and diversity, all of those things require sustainability work. And that's been highlighted in the most recent IPCC report as well. Some of the things we're working on looking forward, a bunch of new members in 2022 as well. Really excited to be able to share these, showing that ongoing understanding of organizations that this is part of the future of how they're going to remain being an innovative, not risk exposed and progressive organization. We're also working on 3 new programs, the development of a green building network, not looking at buildings, but helping the development industry be ready for the things that they're going to need to do to get us to a low carbon future, because there's a lot of work that we can generate and a really strong sector we could build. We're developing an ambassador program, and that's actually helping individuals get their employers to think about sustainability if they're not already, and enabling them and building their capacity. And finally, in partnership with the other organizations in the Evolve Green space, which includes both Wilfrid Laurier University, University of Waterloo, and the Accelerator Center, creating a community sustainability lab where anybody in the community can raise systemic issues that are barriers to our low carbon or just future, and we can actually work on finding a made in Waterloo region solution to those problems. We awarded a number of partner awards as well as regular awards this year to our champions and partners of the year, rookie of the year, a bunch for sustainable commuting and partnerships and breakthroughs. So congratulations to all the award winners that you see here on the screen. And I want to say thank you for letting me come and present today and for being such great advocates for sustainability. I know how important this is to Woolwich. And I speak with your staff and your CAO regularly about trying to move this forward, and really happy to have you around the climate action table as well, just as partners in your own operations as well. So thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you, Tova, for the quick overview. Great work that you're doing. Is there anything specific in Woolwich that you can speak to that you're working on? I know we had talked about doing some measurements and some of those things. Have you been able to make progress on that?
Yeah, I know that your team is working on some data with the Impact Network, formerly Regional Sustainability Initiative, to understand your own footprint on your operations. So that's on all of the things that the township owns and operates yourself. And then we're also working on some options for how to get more resources and supports to your organization and partnerships so that we can help you accelerate even faster, as well as all of the good climate action work, of course.
Of course. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Merlehan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Tova. I think a couple of years ago, we talked as a council about a carbon budget. And I know it was another group that had advocated towards us, and we were talking about that. I'm wondering if you have an update on where we're at on our carbon budget.
Yeah, great question, Councillor Merlehan. What we're finding is it's not as simple. A carbon budget's not simple. So there's some work being done around the climate action table to figure out a way that we can all do it the same, so that we're doing an apples to apples comparison across the region, because of course we do our carbon footprint as a region. So we'll do our budgeting as well. So there's work being done there for what's the region-wide approach, and then we can use it in each organization, each individual municipality.
Okay, thank you. Is that something that maybe in the next year we'll have?
I hope so. It's quite complicated to do. It sounds simple. It's not quite like a financial budget, because of course there are areas out of control. And so that's part of the problem. Is a carbon budget for a municipality includes every resident, for example. So how do we budget that? How do we account for it? How does it tie in? So there's some conversations about that too. How do we, instead of doing for the whole community, do we do it for the corporation or for the infrastructure that you build? So that's what's taking a bit of time, is to figure out what is the best practice, so that we're not launching something prematurely that actually does us a disservice.
Okay, thank you. Makes sense.
Other questions? I have one more. So a company like BioN Power that creates power, how does a company like that tie into a carbon budget for the region? Because I believe they could power all of Elmira with the energy they produce.
Yeah, great question. They produce energy through a FIT contract, feed-in tariff contract. So all the energy they produce goes to the grid. So it doesn't belong to the carbon budget of Waterloo Region because it doesn't stay necessarily in Waterloo Region. It feeds to the grid, as I understand it. There are, however, opportunities for, though I could be wrong. I don't have the exact details, but I understand it is a FIT contract. So it goes to the Greater Ontario Energy Grid. But there are opportunities for organizations to do micro digesters where they could do that. And it's called an offset. So even if you did a solar panel, that's an offset. So you're still burning the greenhouse gases unless you're using it on site, and then you're offsetting the amount that is generated, greenhouse gases that are generated.
Okay, interesting. It's still a production of energy. I don't see the difference, but we don't need to get into that today. Councillor Shantz, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to Tova. So how do you keep track of somebody that does it personally? Like if they do something in their home, or like you say, some kind of solar panel or something like that on their house? How do you keep track of that, and how do you get credit for that?
Great question. So the good people at Reap Green Solutions are the experts in residential, but they have a program called Project Neutral, where you can go in and put in your own utility bills, the kind of car you drive, how many kilometers you drive, that kind of thing, and it actually calculates how many you have. They will then come into your home and do an energy audit, help you do reductions, figure out what are the systems you could change. A lot of times it's electrification, getting off of either propane, fuel oil, natural gas, and moving to something like an air source heat pump. Doesn't have to be ground source anymore. The air source heat pumps certainly work here. And then they would see what their emissions are. In terms of our accounting for that, when we do the climate action carbon footprint, what we do is we get the data from all of the utilities, for example, and that is energy generated as well as energy used. And then we can actually say from the residential sector, and we can even say from Woolwich Township, in the residential sector, this is how much carbon was used. In the business sector, in transportation, based on the number of vehicles and the types of vehicles that are registered, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how we do the footprint. It's not a simple process, but it's a good one.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you, Tova, for coming today and presenting to us.
Thank you for the time and for all the support over the years. Appreciate it. Good luck, everyone, with the election.
Thank you. Okay, we have one delegation. Before we begin this evening, I have some instructions to read for the delegate. You have a maximum of 7 minutes to speak. There will be a timer on the screen, and you'll hear a warning sound when you have 1 minute left and when your time is up. Once you are finished, please wait for questions of clarification from council. When there are no more questions for you, please turn your microphone and camera off again. You may listen in to the rest of the meeting or leave when you want. Council discussion and debate will start when all questions of clarification have finished. So tonight we welcome Mr. Liebold, and you may begin your delegation when you're ready. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Hi, everyone. So me and my wife bought a house in Elmira just over 3 years ago, and we were living in it for about 6 months, and then our sewer main backed up into our basement, and there was a lot of sewage in our basement. So we cleared that out with a drain snake, and we thought that would be the end of it. Sure enough, it happened again, and we had to clear it out and clean that all up. And at this point, we sought help from the township. And I spoke with Dave Heichert, and he suggested that we replace the portion of our sewer main on our property. So we took out permits and scheduled all this and got it fixed. And we had the township out to take a look and inspect it. And our plumber brought up an issue past our property line under the road with an improper slope, causing sewage to come back towards our house. And we brought this issue up with the township. They didn't seem too concerned. So we finished the job, we backfilled, and all was well for about a year or just over a year. And then the same thing happened again. So we called the township out, and they brought their drain snake to have a look with the camera. And it was clear that there is an issue off my property line under the road. And they said that there's nothing they can do about it and that it's fully my responsibility to fix this issue, including the sewer, excavation, fixing of the road, the sidewalk, and everything, which I find kind of unacceptable. And a lot to ask of a first-time homeowner, because these type of things can cost tens of thousands of dollars to fix. And it doesn't make sense for me to have to fix something that isn't on my property at all. So what I'd propose is I would like the township to take responsibility for it and get it fixed for me. And that's all.
Thank you. Are there any questions of clarification for Mr. Leibold? Councillor Merlehan?
Sorry, it's through you, Mayor Shantz. It's not a question to the delegate. I was wondering if we could hear from staff before.
We'll do that.
Just so then we could still come back to ask questions of Mr. Leibold. If that's possible?
Yeah, we can always go back and
Okay.
re-ask. Sure. So Mr. Leibold, I'm going to get you to turn your camera and microphone off, and we'll hear from staff. And then if council has some more questions for you, you can turn your camera and your mic back on.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
First, I'll check with the clerk. Are there any unregistered delegations for this topic?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no unregistered delegations tonight.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Poupey, could you speak to the presentation at all?
Sure. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to members of council. I think in general terms, I would say that the township does field a number of these inquiries in older parts of Elmira, where there is challenges with the sewer laterals. We do have a sewer lateral policy and procedure that does put the onus on residents. They are responsible for sewer laterals from the house all the way to the main. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of opportunity to correct such things unless there's a full reconstruction project that would take place. And at that time, we could look to lower sewers in older parts of town. That is contingent on outfalls and grade of those outfalls, so it's not a guarantee. It is an unfortunate situation that Mr. Leopold has presented, but I think the situation from staff is that this is, like I said, we field a couple of these a year. And while it is unfortunate, the onus is still on the property owner for that sewer lateral repair. The only time the township is involved in a sewer lateral repair outside of a reconstruction project is if there is a collapse that occurs within the public road allowance, and at which time that would be the township's responsibility.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Poupey? Councillor Merlehan?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Mr. Poupey. Is there an alternative solution for the Leobolds? This is a problem. I know I've dealt with several of these over the years, and there really hasn't been a resolution from the township perspective. But what is the ultimate fix here that could help the Leobolds out?
I don't know the specifics. Typically, what has happened is homeowners have either engaged in ongoing maintenance, meaning that they would have a plumber come in and continue to rod the line out once or a couple of times a year. Another option would be to look at a mechanical means with an injector pit of some form and pump sewage out so that you wouldn't get that sewage back into the house. Appreciate those are costly. They are ongoing maintenance items. And it's something that obviously we would look to try to rectify through a reconstruction project. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of options other than those two, which would mean another capital investment, obviously.
Okay, and what would be the timeline on reconstruction of wherever the Leobolds live?
We don't have that, unfortunately, on our 5-year capital at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Through you to Jared. He intimated that there was a problem from his cutoff where he joins, and the sewer. Is that a problem or is that a perceived problem? He seemed to think there was some issue there in that last section.
Through you, Mayor Shantz to Councillor Shantz, I'm not sure of all the specifics that, other than the only thing I would offer is that the sewer has existed for a long time. Obviously, it's unfortunate that they've only been here 3 years. I'm not sure what the previous homeowners had done. I'm not sure if we've had issues in the past. I'm not aware of them, but it's something we could certainly look into, see if we've received any complaints from this address before in the past. So I'm not 100% sure what transpired, but it seems like there is a sag or a belly in the line potentially. And it seems to work for a time and then stops working. So I'm not sure again if there's just solids accumulating in the line and that needs to be a maintenance issue to be cleared out, whether it's annually or semi-annually, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any further questions. Mr. Diebold, it sounds like this is something that you need to take care of. On your own. It's an unfortunate situation that exists in some of our older neighborhoods. Mr. Pepe, are you going to check if there were other complaints previously on this address?
Yeah, to you, Mayor Shantz, we can certainly look into see if we've fielded other complaints at this address. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else on this? Okay, thank you then. Before we pass a motion approving and receiving the consent agenda as a whole, would anyone like to remove any items for discussion? I have a mover and a seconder for the consent items then. Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have 2 staff reports tonight. The first one is the Woolwich Environmental Advisory Committee. And I will call on Ms. Deanne Fries, Director of Development Services.
Thank you. So this report is for a new committee that would be called an Environmental Advisory Committee. So currently, Woolwich has Trees for Woolwich and Woolwich Healthy Communities, which do great work through hands-on environmental enhancement and also environmental education. So this new committee would be similar to what's already established in the larger municipalities, and they would provide that balance so that they could comment on township environmental and sustainability policies and regulations. So things that would be coming forward through the official plan, through other regulations, through secondary plans to promote environmental sustainability and protection. So less of a hands-on focus, but this would be the third kind of environmental committee that we would have in the township to fill that missing gap. So what right now we're proposing in this report is to establish the committee to start looking for members now, and then eventually through the budget, we would recommend a small budget allocation for the committee and formal appointment of members.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Merlehan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Ms. Fries. I noticed in the makeup of the committee that there wasn't a politician appointed to the committee. Is there a reason for that?
I think the reason is because we're looking at members that would have that environmental background so that they could provide guidance, not actual hands-on work, but guidance to staff in developing those policy documents. And then those policy documents would ultimately have to come to council for approval. So I don't know if there's a direct reason, but just more of a fact that they would be doing a lot of internal work that would eventually come to all of council.
Yeah, okay. I guess my opinion just on that, and that's based on being part of the Heritage Committee. You know, the Heritage Committee didn't have a politician appointed, and then, you know, I can certainly see the benefits of having one of the members of council be on these committees to be able to be the go-between between staff and also the go-between to advocate at council for some of the issues, would just have a better understanding of what the issues are, rather than, you know, we read the minutes, you know, usually months and months after the meetings happen, that we get those minutes. I've just seen a really good benefit being part of the heritage and taking on more responsibility with just being the go-between for members of the committee and staff. So that I would probably like to see a member of council be part of these committees and being more involved.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you, I just wanted to point out that we have included the mayor as an ex officio member of the committee, which means they can come and go as they want, and then again attend, and or when they are there, they can participate fully in the committee. I guess the question would be, do we want more than that, or is that sufficient? To Councillor Merlihan's question.
Councillor Merlihan.
I guess I would probably, you could say it, you know, the mayor could still show up if they wanted to, but I think a dedicated member of council is better than, you know, a mayor showing up, you know, a couple of times a year to a meeting. Yeah, that's all I would say, I guess.
Any other questions? Okay. My understanding of how this committee would work, and I don't have a problem with putting a politician on it if that makes sense to council. My understanding of how this committee would work, and Ms. Freeze, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it would really be a resource sort of committee to planning staff, as opposed to a sort of policy framework sort of committee.
Yeah, I would say that they would be a resource to staff, not maybe just planning staff, but other staff as well. Anytime that we're developing any kind of a broader policy or regulation that would also impact the environment in some way. We don't have current expertise on staff either to provide this kind of environmental scope. So this would be helpful for us for any kind of documents that we're producing out of my department specifically, but others as well in the township.
Okay, thank you. There's a recommendation before you. Would someone like to move it or amend it or otherwise? Councillor Merlihan?
I'll move the recommendation with the option to add a politician, a dedicated member of council, I guess, to the committee.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor McMillan? Discussion?
Just a question. I think I can second that. Just with the option, would that kind of be left open to the council, the new council, to decide whether they want to have that? If that's, I just a clarification on what we mean by option, and I'll second it.
Okay, Councillor Merlihan?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Our second report is Drinking Water Quality Management Standard Annual Report, and I will call on Mr. Poupé, and I think we're finally caught up, aren't we?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, and through you to council. We are a little bit early even than what we typically do. Typically, we'd wait till the very last council meeting in December to have this report. So I think we're making progress in that regard, and I think next year will be even sooner. So without further ado, I just wanted to present council with our annual Drinking Water Quality Management Standard report, asking council to receive this for information and endorse the changes made to the Drinking Water Quality Management Standard document. Again, to highlight to council, we did receive 11 incidences of adverse water quality. These are not to be construed as poor water. These are just hits at times. Sometimes it's as simple as a poor sample taken by an operator. all are resolved with flushing. There's never boil water advisories in these instances. And generally, the township has anywhere between about 10 to 12 of these incidences annually, and that's some historical numbering. With that, we did go through our external and internal audits as required. I will remind council was aware of incidences of non-compliance with non-reporting in Breslau. That has been corrected through additional training of staff. We've improved our processing for indicating our residuals as well. All have been vetted through our ministry auditors and our internal auditors as well. So I think that's some improvements, and we're looking to make some further enhancements potentially through this coming budget season with respect to some software, but that remains to be seen yet. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Merlehan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you to Mr. Poupé. Can you just give us a brief update on how the staffing resources are in the water department? I know we've had some vacancies in some key areas, and I'm just wondering if those have been, filled.
To Mayor Shantz, Councillor Merlehan. So I think happy to say that the improvements that Council and Thorst have made a change for sure. The challenge still remains, I think, a bit of area wide or even globally maybe, but water and wastewater operators are in demand. So we obviously are still competing with a lot of folk, but at this juncture, I do believe we have a recent vacancy, and we potentially will be onboarding an operator in training, which is the first time I think in a while that the township has had that opportunity. So I'd say all in all, we're in decent shape, not perfect yet, but certainly much better than where we were before the changes were implemented. So I think that's the good news story.
Okay, anyone else? Can I have a mover and a seconder for the motion then, please? Councillor Shantz, seconded by Councillor Merlehan. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I don't have a report on regional matters. We've been doing a lot of work on, I don't have a report and then I start talking. We've been doing a lot of work on housing issues and trying to get ourselves set up for the winter season. And we're making progress, but it's a complicated issue for sure. Council reports and updates. Councillor Shantz, I think you had something.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor Shantz. If you can indulge me, I just have a bit of an explanation here first, and then I'll get to a question eventually. From the start of my first term on council in 2014, I've worked diligently to have Woolwich become a leader in developing a township standards policy or topsoil standards policy. When the staff report was presented a couple of years ago, I also made sure it was a standard with specific requirements to adhere to, and not simply a guideline that leaves room for interpretation. I want to thank the rest of council for supporting me and finally having this policy passed. Tonight, I'm revisiting the township's topsoil standard policy for two reasons. One, for anyone that is following tonight's meeting, they should know that the township does in fact have a topsoil standards policy. If you are a new homeowner and spending your weekends digging stones out of your yard with a pick and shovel, getting it ready for sod, you should contact the township to see if your property is covered by the new standard. I make that point because there have been questions about the timing of certain new housing developments, but I'm hoping we are well past the grandfathered in stage. Number two, as I have recently witnessed, I can see that some developers are not following this new topsoil policy because in fact, I did see more than one new homeowner doing exactly that, digging out stones with a pick and shovel. I shared the photos that I took with staff of stones the size of my fist and one almost the size of a football. And if I found that size of stone on the surface, I can only imagine what has been buried. I will not disclose the name of the developer. I introduced this policy because we talk about extreme weather conditions. We issue a water ban every year, and yet we don't supply good topsoil base to grow grass and absorb any kind of rainfall. I find this really frustrating. I am reaching the end of my term on council, and I was hoping that this topsoil standard would have been taken care of and well behind us by now as part of the regular inspection checklist routine, but clearly it hasn't. So I apologize if I could ask Ms. Fries, because I think that she was not part of this policy when it was put in place. Excuse me. But I ask, how can I be assured that something is going to be done to make sure the developers adhere to this policy going forward? And then I have another question after that. So maybe we'll start with that.
Ms. Fries.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. So what we're looking at doing is introducing a new inspection just when the soil's on, before the sod goes on, with an additional fee for that inspection as well to cover our staff costs. So this is something that would be introduced through the new fees and charges bylaw in October when that bylaw comes, but it would allow the opportunity for our staff to go out there and inspect before the sod goes on. Right now, we've basically been working on a complaint basis because there's no additional inspection between when the sod goes on.
Okay, that's good news. Thank you for that. I guess with people, probably a lot of people probably don't know we even have a policy. So doing it on a complaint basis, I don't think is a real good idea. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to enforce some inspections because obviously we can't rely on the developers to enforce this themselves. So I think you answered the second question as well. So you obviously are looking into getting something done for October. So when would this actually start then?
So we'd be able to start collecting the fee after the fees and charges bylaw were what is in place. But until then, we would be able to do inspections, but we wouldn't be able to collect a fee. It does have implications on staffing as well. So we do need to be up to our full staff to start the process as well. So
do we have any idea when they would actually be starting to do an inspection?
I would anticipate that we'd be able to start in November when we're fully staffed.
Okay, and what about ones that like where I was in the subdivision and the topsoil is already, well, I guess they call it topsoil, is already put down, but it hasn't been. Do we have anybody that can go in there and have a look at that and then make that, have that removed and put proper topsoil in?
Yep, through you, Mayor Shantz, where there is a situation where the proper soil standard was not adhered to, because we have that policy in place, we can get the developer to go in, pull back the sod, replace the soil.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Outstanding activity list. Anything on there? Not seeing anything. Okay, we have 2 notices of motion on our agenda tonight. But before we get into that, I'm just going to read a little statement here. Before we begin any discussion on this item tonight, I'd like to remind everyone of the standards council approved for our meetings in the Code of Conduct and Procedural Bylaw. Everyone must not use offensive words and language that is not inclusive or that discriminates on any protected ground under the Human Rights Code. And it will not be tolerated. As chair, I will allow everyone to express their opinion, their position, as long as they uphold these standards. Please be mindful of your words and their impact on those who may be watching. So as I said, we do have 2 notices of motion. We spent a fair time discussing one of them already. So I'm going to go a little bit by, not a little bit, I'm going to go by the book tonight and suggest that if we have a mover and a seconder on a motion, we will discuss it. Otherwise, we will not. So there are two motions in front of you, and I will leave it to council to move or not. Councillor McMillan.
So just a process question, are these being considered as one agenda item and there are two possible motions? Is that where we are?
I believe there are two motions that address the same issue. So I'm at council's hands. If you want to do one and then the other, we can do that. Or, but I need a mover and a seconder before we discuss either motion.
Well, I'll move the second one.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that, Councillor Shantz? Discussion. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. In drafting this motion, I think that there were comments made on September 12th by most people in council, and I think tried to capture a lot of what was said in that meeting. I think the one thing that I would like to change in this motion, so I would move an amendment to this, is the mandatory training for council. I think in the wording of the motion, if we took out mandatory training for council, and at the end of that paragraph, put in, and council will receive mandatory EDI training, I think that would improve this motion. I think that when I spoke on September 12th, I spoke about creating a process where council could be guided and directed by impacted communities and people, and create a safe process for that. I think that we don't need to leave it open-ended or step back to create space for other voices when it comes to training for council. So I think that was a shortcoming of this motion, that it left for the possibility for training for council. I don't think that we need to leave that open. I think that we can put that in at the end. So I think that it's a friendly amendment to the motion, that we take out mandatory training for council where it's written, and then at the end put in, and council will receive mandatory EDI training.
So I'm a little bit confused. You're speaking to the second motion, right?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm missing where those changes are in that second motion.
So that towards the end of the fourth paragraph, so it says, be it resolved that Woolwich Council directs staff to connect with community groups that can provide guidance with regards to best next steps. So it's talking about leaving us open to where the community wants us to go, or impacted communities and impacted people where they want us to go. And it says this can include but not be limited to continuing to explore Rainbow Crosswalk, community events and celebrations, an equity, diversity, and inclusion committee, mandatory training for council, or an EDI lens that can be applied to all staff reports. The mandatory training doesn't need to be a possibility. For us to say that we want to take that training ourselves is not, giving direction to anyone except ourselves. So that mandatory training for council, if it came out of the list of things that could be included but not be limited to, and then be something that council will actually do.
Okay. Does that work for you, Councillor Shantz?
Yeah, I can accept that as a friendly amendment. And I like the fact that it's not geared to just one organization or one item. So that's what I liked about this motion compared to the other motion. It was more encompassing as far as I was concerned. It wasn't just one thing. So,
Okay.
But yeah, I can second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Redicott?
Yeah, in the second motion, I appreciated that it was mentioned in the second whereas towards any person or group of people guaranteed protection under the Ontario Human Rights Code. I think that's important to be embedded in the motion. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Merlehan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Shantz. I'm glad that there was the amendment that Councillor McMillan added to that motion. Thought it was a little off, that it was, you know, we could do the training or not. And I think it's really important that we all do the training and all the future councils do the training. I'm happy with either of the motions. They accomplish generally exactly the same thing. So I'm glad to see that council is moving in this direction, and happy to support this motion the way it's written. And I hope we have an unanimous vote on this, that we're all in favor of it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. There's one more thing, and that is discussion on our next meeting date before we get to the bylaws. Our next meeting date was to be a special council meeting on October 31st. That being, of course, Halloween night with trick-or-treaters. I was suggesting maybe we would want to change that. We have some options to do Tuesday, November 1st or Monday, November 7th. I believe there was a bit of a conflict on potential conflict on November 1st. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you. We did look at a potential conflict on November 1st with the BIA, which often meets at 6 p.m. Sorry, that's the St. Jacobs BIA. And then no conflict with November 7th as an option. Someone also suggested to me earlier today that October 31st, holding the meeting earlier may be an option, although there are several reports on the agenda that night.
Okay. In the hands of council, Councillor Merlehan.
I'm okay with if we went earlier on October 31st. But you know, we've done Halloween before in the past. We've done Valentine's Day. We've done other things being in council meetings. So unless there's a huge conflict, I'm quite happy to not give out candy at the door and have a good excuse for not being there. So I'm okay sticking with Halloween unless it's a huge problem for other people that really. I end up eating half of it myself, so it's a good thing. So
willpower. Council, it's in your hands. What do you want to do? Councillor Shantz?
I'm happy to just leave it the way it is.
Okay. Councillor Redekop's nodding. Everyone's nodding. All right. You sure? Yeah.
Sorry, Sam.
To make
Mayor
sure you're
Sean?
politically correct. Yes.
The only thing that just popped in my head right now, do staff that would have to attend the meeting have young kids that we're taking away? For me, I don't have kids. It's not an issue, but is there a thing with staff where it might be taking them away from their kids?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, we didn't look at that. There were some staff when we asked about the question said they wouldn't mind having the night to their families, but there were others that said there was no concern. So didn't specifically ask, heard a little bit of feedback, not conclusive maybe.
Okay, Councillor McMillan.
Would there be an opportunity for staff to have somebody cover a person who maybe does have small kids that they want to trick or treat with? I can't imagine us doing anything too pressing between the election and the new council. Could staff be able to allow those people to go out with their kids?
Again, through you, Mayor Shantz, I wouldn't see a problem with that. We've been actually allowing even more flexibility for staff. You probably see people pop in and out of the meeting on Zoom. So I'm sure people are also kind of listening to what's going on at home. And I think we could probably also have coverage for those who really need to be off, off the entire night if needed.
Okay. Think I'm seeing consensus here to leave it regular time on October 31st. Okay, thanks for considering that. We have a motion that the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a first, second, third time and finally passed, and that they be numbered as bylaw number 50-2022 to 53-2022, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. We have a bylaw to govern the proceedings of public meetings, bylaw to provide for the appointment of a chief building official and building inspectors, a bylaw to provide for the appointment of a municipal law enforcement officer, animal control officer, property standards officer for the township. That's one person for all those jobs, by the way, not 3 people. And a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of council from today. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Merle and seconded by Councillor Redekop. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And with that, I would take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Shantz, seconded by Councillor McMillan. All those in favor? And that is carried. This meeting adjourns to meet again in regular session on Monday, October 31st. That will be after the election. So all the best to all the candidates running, and thank you to everyone for putting your names forward. Council would like to thank all who participated or tuned into the meeting tonight on our YouTube live stream. I will remind council to stay connected until we receive confirmation that the live stream has stopped. Good night, everyone.